Welcome to True Wellness with Dr. D, the podcast where we explore what it takes to live with vitality, balance, and purpose. I am Dr. D, and each week I'll bring you powerful tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. From health and wellness to mindset and navigating life's challenges, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of true well-being. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of True Wellness with Dr. D. I'm really excited to have joined here with me today Karissa Rasmussen, who is one of the very, very, very important people in my life. She is one of the health coaches in my practice, and together, we have created what is called the Insight Method of Coaching. And today we're going to talk a lot about this Insight Method. We're going to talk about how you can get from where you are being stuck to where it is that you want to be. So Karissa, thank you so much for joining us here today. I know we've got a lot to cover on today's episode.
Yes, thank you for having me. Welcome, everyone. My name is Karissa, like Dr. Danielle said, and I am a certified health and wellness coach, as well as a certified NLP coach. And I've had the incredible opportunity to work alongside Dr. Danielle and our amazing team for several years. My passion is really helping clients create meaningful transformations in their life. And I really stumbled upon it because when I was young, I was sick a lot. I think I've told you this story. Yeah, I was sick a lot, and I was introduced to functional medicine through my mother, and going that route and finding those doctors when I was a young kid really helped me understand what true health was, because I really got a lot of benefit and I wasn't sick as a child anymore. But then, of course, growing up, life gets into the way. So I stumbled upon your practice, and I was actually client first.
Yes, you are.
Yep, before I came working. So my passion was really just to kind of pay that forward and help other people, not only in their health, but mindset and their daily habits. And today I'm excited to share about, how I approach sessions and just the framework, like you said, the Insight Method.
Yes. Karissa, I think most people who are listening can relate. I mean, as human beings, we all come up against things in our lives. We're like, oh, look at that. I keep kind of self-sabotaging in this area. Or it's like, oh, darn it, look, I keep making that same mistake over and over and over again. What is going on? Or sometimes we just lose our motivation, right? We're like going strong. And then we lose that motivation. And so I'd like to talk today about how can we as human beings move past these places? How can we get ourselves unstuck? How can we begin to look at things differently? And what are the different components that make those things happen?
Well, I think, every session begins with a focus on building a client's confidence and belief in their own ability, right? So that's the I in the insight, the inspire empowerment. So Together we tap into their strengths, we uncover the motivation that they already have within themselves. And then we nurture that awareness. So I'll guide clients to recognize patterns in their thoughts, in their behaviors and habits that they may not even fully notice. Awareness is such a powerful foundation, and that's where transformation begins. And then from there, we'll set goals, we'll collaborate together to create the goals so they're crystal clear, so they're meaningful, and they're aligned with their values. Because when goals resonate with a person on a personal level, they'll start to feel excited. They'll start to feel that it's achievable for them.
So true.
And you had talked about the mindset too, and that's like investigating the patterns, right? Yeah. So helping clients explore their recurring behaviors, their limiting beliefs, the things that are holding them back, because that insight helps them make more intentional, conscious choices moving forward.
I love that. So that's the I, the N, the S, the I. Let's go before we go through the rest of them. Let's go back because, you talked about inspiring and empowering and motivating. And I think there's a lot of different ways that you accomplish that with our clients in your session. And then I think there's also a lot of ways that we as human beings can start to work to provide ourselves with that inspiration and that motivation and that empowerment. And I think one of the big things that's pretty characteristic of our practice in general is we don't look at people like they're broken and they need to be fixed, right? Like everyone is whole and complete. And I think that's a big part of that inspiring and empowerment section there, right? That segment.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important for people to feel empowered because, like you said, we're not broken, right? We typically just go off of a belief system that usually isn't ours to begin with.
Yeah,
and then we find that it's not working for us, but we take it on as if it is our own. So when you can work with someone and help you to identify that, you can really start to separate from that. And nothing is really good or bad. You know, we're really just learning and growing and constantly elevating. I think far too often things get labeled as something as good or bad, and that really defeats us. You know, it doesn't really bring any motivation towards us because, as we know, motivation is built off of emotion, right? So discipline is a little bit different, but motivation is built off emotion. So many of us are always looking for that motivation. But if we're not feeling good, or if we're feeling like everything we're doing is failing, how do we really get that motivation? So working with people and being able to identify where it's coming from, I think is a real eye opener for people. And it just gives them that piece back of themselves that they can start to feel whole, you know, because we have all the answers. Our body is an amazing, amazing mechanism, and it'll do exactly what we need it to do when we provide it with the right environment.
Yes.
And that's not just food, right? It's also emotional. Emotions play a big component into how our body operates and works.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that is such a very big piece. It's like coming from the place of where we are whole and recognizing that, hey, this emotional component is big, and we've both done a lot of work and research into the study of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and from that work, he's done a great job scientifically of putting together, how our thoughts. The thoughts that we have create our emotions, which then, begin to trickle down into our behaviors and our reality. And of course, at the end of the day, our personalities. So I think it's really important to talk about how do we shift and alter and change those thoughts and that mindset? And I think you said before, it's that and nurturing that awareness, just beginning to pay attention to the thoughts that you're having in your head.
Yeah. I mean, does something feel good, or does something, not feel good? So we always have those two avenues in front of us all the time. So they're always available to us, right? So if you're constantly feeling bad, it doesn't mean that you're bad, or there doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It's just that we have developed mechanisms to protect us. And so we tend to go into the way that we always know to go. And even if it causes us pain, it's still familiar. And we like familiar. As human beings, we don't always like to change. Many people will tell you, I love change. Maybe you do, but you've had to do some work to get there, right? We typically don't love to change. We're set in our ways. So working one-on-one with people or working with a team of people, you're fully supported in that, and you understand that you're not alone, and you have that connection with people. And then we start building upon, that connection with the understanding, with the knowledge, because when you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, it's so much easier to shift.
Yeah, it's so true. I love what you said. I just want to highlight that for our listeners, because it's really important. Like, we might think we like change, but the truth is human beings don't really like change. And what you said was key. When things stay the same, even if we don't like it, at some level, there's so much comfort in it being the same, right? So there's comfort in, complaining about the same thing over and over and over again, even though complaining itself per se is not necessarily comfortable, but we have a way that we recognize ourselves and those patterns in that constant complaint, right?
We always gain something out of it.
Yes.
And it's hard to admit it when we are doing something that feels negative, that we're gaining something out of it.
Yes.
You can take a look at that. You'll gain so much awareness. And that's where, again, you can start to shift. Because these things, they're just tools, right? They actually help us to elevate. They're actually there to show us what's important to us. They're actually there to say, hey, maybe this need is getting unmet, or maybe this boundary is being crossed. They're really not there to cause us harm. We've just built these systems and techniques, in a way to protect ourselves ultimately.
I think that's the key. That's the key point. And when you work with the insight method and you're working on that the investigating patterns, I mean, that's what you're looking at, right? Starting to look at, okay, what are these patterns? Why are they occurring? Where did they come from? What are the behaviors? What are the beliefs behind the behaviors, and where do those beliefs come from, right? I remember, just a couple days ago, I was working with one of our clients, and her diet's been completely off. She's aware her diet's been off, and she has this consistent thing where when there's something emotional that happens, her diet goes off. Right? It's like she doesn't care anymore. It's over. She's just going for whatever is the most convenient and whatever is going to bring her comfort. And so going through that insight method, recognizing that, hey, this is a pattern. This happens every time. When did that pattern start? Why is that pattern occurring? Hey, whose belief is that? Is that your belief? Like you said earlier, is that your belief? Or is that somebody else's? And Karissa, I love what you said. And again, I want to highlight this for our listeners too. It's that we're not, we're not bad as a result of having these things. And we do get something out of it, whether we want to recognize it or not. And I think if we just took the opportunity to start to look at the things that are our biggest complaints, or the patterns and self-sabotage that bother us the most, and we just start asking the question like, why do I keep doing this? What am I getting out of it, right? Like, what am I getting out of it? And then just really be authentic is the word I'm looking for. Really be authentic with yourself and like, okay, what am I getting out of this?
Yeah, I agree. Because, it's interesting with who you like, the story that you just talked about, because when you're experiencing like a pattern of, frustration, anger, or overwhelm, we usually become self-disconnected, right? We withdraw in those moments. So it's like something triggers us, an emotional response, and it feels too much to handle. So our instinct is just to shut down and disconnect. And not only from the external world, but also from ourselves. And that's something very common. And I know this because I have done it too.
We all do it. We're human.
So the disconnection is usually our way of protecting ourselves from the discomfort, but then it prevents us from, fully engaging with our needs and our emotions in the moment. So, doing things like journaling or just getting really authentic with how we're feeling is so helpful, because again, that feeling is not there to hurt us. And I believe that our society, and many of us, I know I did when I was young, like the emotions that are loud, the emotions that are strong, we're usually told no, stop, quiet down, you're too much.
Yeah. It's okay.
Yes. Or we try to get comforted a lot. Yes. I've had to learn to even switch that with my children, that when, they're feeling a certain way, I got to let them feel it instead of being like, "Ooh, please stop," because that's my discomfort.
Yes.
It's not theirs. Their discomfort, like they're going through their stuff, but it's mine to make it stop. So it's like we retreat to that emotional safety, even if that means abandoning the process of our desires.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting how we've been taught that, and how, society at large does that.
Yeah, it's almost as if we're kind of like punishing somebody or something else. But in reality, what we're doing is punishing ourselves.
Yes.
And so we're carrying around all this weight, all this baggage as a result.
Yeah. And then we wonder why we have digestive issues.
Yes.
We wonder why we have skin issues. We wonder why, our liver's not working optimally, and just all the systems and things going on with that, around us. Because we've worked with people, right, who were like, my diet's great. Things are fine, like I eat pretty well. And while that may be true for some people, there's still that other component.
Yes.
Well, what else are you not addressing?
Yes. Yeah. So what would you say is when you're working with clients, helping them get healthy, what would you say is that biggest piece in terms of what are the majority of people struggling with in terms of their health, their life, the habits they're trying to switch? What gets in the way?
I think it's really just, there's a lot of factors, right? Self-worth is a big one, boundaries is another big one. And because you can give anyone the knowledge.
Yes.
And they can read it, and they can absorb it, and they can understand it, on like the dietary, in that realm. But if we're not really looking at the emotional piece and our daily habits and what it is we're going for and our goals, you're kind of left falling flat constantly. And I think that's what happens when most people go into this realm of like nutrition and health. You didn't get this way because it was just, lack of knowledge is some of it, right? But we typically don't find ourselves sick a lot, chronic inflammation, overeating, just eating really bad food because we didn't know any better.
Yes.
That is a part of it, though. I don't want to say that it's not a part of it, because it certainly is a component of it.
Yes.
But I think it's more emotional. So having the insight framework that we do, we kind of hit all that, because we're investigating the patterns, like seeing those, like I said before, like those recurring behaviors, those limiting beliefs, like, and being intentional and conscious with them.
Yes.
Because that's all they really want too.
Yeah.
Those emotions, they're just knocking on the door.
Right. That's right. I'm always a strong advocate, and she is on our lineup here for our podcast episodes. So listeners, be on the lookout, or search our history if you're listening to this much later. But Joan Rosenberg's work with 90 Seconds to a Life You Love, which you and I both use with our clients all the time. That ability to just feel into an emotion versus band-aiding it with food, or ignoring it, or stuffing it down, or doing something else to not feel that feeling. But when we actually engage versus burying it, it's like 90 seconds. And Joan's going to share all with us exactly how those mechanisms works and give us all her tips and tricks. But I find that really important, especially given what you were just saying.
Yeah. I mean, and how do we live our authentic selves if we're not fully feeling into this stuff? How do we, even have the self-compassion? How do we develop our self-worth if we're constantly always being like, no, can't feel that. No, it's really impossible. I don't think you could.
Agreed. Agreed. It's almost like there's like a protective cover that we put around ourselves. And you said it earlier. You said like all these things, these behaviors, all of these things, they are protective mechanisms, right? Our beliefs and our behaviors and our fears and the way we bury negative emotions, it is a protective mechanism, right? As human beings, and remember, what is our innate response is to protect ourselves. It is
survival.
Survival. It's to be on the lookout for the negative.
Yes.
We're always on the lookout for the negative. So it takes us as human beings a little bit extra, right? Because we've got all this rationalization, justification, all this stuff that goes on in our little brains. But it takes something to begin to step outside of that, to begin to look at the world with a different perspective, to look at things for a different perspective and look and say, okay, hey, look at that. That's really interesting. I created this belief that I'm not worthy as a protective mechanism. So I don't have to put myself out there, or I don't have to take care of myself, right? Yeah. So that nobody bothers me if I look good, or, whatever it is that the belief was.
And how wonderful is it? You know what I mean? Like if you look at the flip side, like how amazing is our mind to do such a thing? Like you just have drum up this protective skill and you didn't sit down and plan it. You just have developed it and it's worked really well.
Yes.
Even though it hurts us and it doesn't feel good, it still has worked really well because that part of you is protecting you. Yeah. So bravo.
Yeah. And the real growth and development and that transformation, right? Because inside the T is transformed through reflection.
Yeah.
That transformation is really about recognizing that that's what's happening behind the scenes, right? That's what's happening behind the scenes. And then deciding powerfully what it is that you're going to do with it, right? So that you can embrace whatever those next steps are for you in your life.
Yeah, because once you start with the awareness, and you're giving feedback, you have recognition, you have accountability.
That's right? A big one. Yeah.
Yep. Regular check-ins, making sure you're on course, building resilience, navigating challenges. You transform the T through the reflection. So integrating, what you've learned, celebrating what you've learned, celebrating the journey, and prepared to make those next steps with clarity. And now you've gained confidence.
Exactly. I love that. One of the things I want to talk about with you too for our listeners is the accountability piece, because accountability it's huge, right? And the truth is, I think as human beings, and I do speak for myself here, it's like I need an outside person to hold me accountable, just to be that extra resource. Like I always have accountability buddies that I am working with on a regular basis, because sometimes I've always got multiple different projects going on at any given time. That because you work with me.
Yeah.
There's always multiple different projects going on at the same time, and life sometimes gets in the way. But what's interesting is when we've got that accountability, when we know that we are just simply reporting back, right? It's not good or bad. There's no judgment. It gives you that opportunity to reflect. Whereas normally, if I'm not, being accountable to somebody else, right? If I'm not being held without accountability, in my head, I can just size credit. Oh, look at that. I didn't get that done today. Oh, look at that. I didn't get that done. Oh, it's like 3 weeks later and that thing's still not one. Oh, well, right? But when you've got that accountability, it's like, oh, okay, well, let's take a look at this. How come I didn't get this done? We actually dive deeper, kind of unpeel the different layers, right?
Yeah. Because, for me too, I can certainly talk myself out of anything. And the difference is too, like, we're usually very negative to ourselves.
Yes.
Right. And that type of accountability is typically not going to move you forward. So I too also work with coaches myself. So I also have that accountability because
Yeah.
it's about creating systems and habits to follow through, like to be able to stay on track, by regularly checking in, asking how, you're progressing, and then troubleshooting the challenges that they face, because it's not about perfection. It's about consistency.
Yes.
So like if a client struggles to stick to a new routine, then we'll just break it down into smaller, actionable steps that feel manageable. Because again, the accountability builds resilience. And again, another way that real transformation happens.
I love it. I love it. I know, even for myself, like what you said, like breaking things down or recognizing the different areas and patterns. Like, for example, this past week, as I've been sending my accountability partner the things that I'm working on, it's like, oh my gosh, my list is not moving. And why isn't my list moving? Because all these it's not like I'm not doing anything, right? I'm working consistently, right? But these other things have unexpectedly popped onto the list. And then I have to start to look at, so, where is it in my day or my schedule or my life in general that I allow just these other things to pop in where my day gets dictated by all the other things versus what I said my day is going to get dictated by. And this is part of the human condition. Yeah. But it's a really good thing to look at. It's a really good place to delve into. If you journal, it's a really good thing to journal about.
Yes. And I myself, I love accountability partners, especially when I'm foraging on something new. So whether that's a coach or whether it's a workout buddy, because you typically don't have the confidence in the beginning, right? So it's helpful to have someone else to be in the arena with. So then you're building and you're growing, because I know for me, when I started out, I didn't want to go for walks or exercise, but if someone else was going, I would do it for them.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll do it for Mary. Mary's going, here I go. But then over time, you build that confidence.
Oh yes, I'll tell one on myself here for sure. So I've got some workout buddies, and every day we work out. And my workout buddy had a procedure done on her back, and she hasn't worked out the last couple of days. And I tell you, I'm not getting up as early because she's not there, right? And I'll tell you that half of the time she's not been there, I haven't done what I said I was going to do. So it's so much better when you've got somebody else there. And it is another part of that thing as human beings, or even for any of our male listeners, I'm sorry, but I do find that for most women, we'll do things to make sure that other people are taken care of before we even engage and take care of ourselves.
Yes.
So that's a big deal.
Yes. Sorry, I just had to text my daughter. She'll be knocking on the door. I'm like, use your key, please. So, and the transformation through reflection, I think we talked about that. So, I also love talking about the importance of goals, and there's a quote that I love to use, and it's a goal without a deadline is just a fantasy.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Indeed.
Yes, because change doesn't happen without action. So when we combine clear goals with a plan, and then again, there's that consistency word, consistent effort and accountability, we create momentum. So when the goals are, meaningful to people, that's where we find the fulfillment. Yes. So my job is just to guide clients through that process and to make it feel achievable, no matter how big or small the steps are.
Love it. Yeah, because everybody takes different steps, right?
Yes.
Some people are like, and everybody takes different size steps, and they take different size steps in different areas of their life, right? There might be one area where they're like, let me take this big, bold leap, right? And then there are other areas where they're like, I need to take little tiny baby steps.
Yeah.
And that's normal.
Yes. None of them are right or wrong. It's whatever works for you is the perfect thing to do. Yes. So we use a variety of tools and techniques to help clients. So, everything I do I think is important to say too is centered around creating a safe and supportive space.
Exactly.
So meeting clients where they are, which is basically what you just said, because then when you meet people where they are, then you can work together to uncover the best path forward.
Yes. I love it. Absolutely love it. So Miss Karissa, or
Yes.
Coach Karissa, I should call you. Coach Karissa, tell me, we always, at True Wellness podcast here, we always like to make sure that we leave our listeners with some really great actionable things that they can do, some practical tips, tricks, strategies that they can use in their life. So what would you say are maybe the top 3 action items that you often use with your clients? What are those top things for people to really begin to start and engage with to create these behavior and habit changes in their lives?
I would say the first top 3, hydration, I just think is so important, and it's something so easy that we can do. And when you start focusing on hydration, you will start to feel better.
Yes.
Regardless of food, that can come later on sometimes for clients.
Yes.
But really just starting to get into a consistent routine. Start really connecting with your body. Start understanding that connection between mind and body, because it's not just about solving problems, it's about creating a sustainable, positive change.
Yeah.
So I start with hydration. I love, simple breathing exercises. I think that's a really beautiful way to connect with your body as well as release toxins, emotions, and meditation.
Yes.
I am a huge fan of meditation. You mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's wonderful to start learning from. He has many books out.
Yes.
There's Dr. Bruce Lipton, who I love. There's a lot of really good books that I can't remember off the top of my head. But just starting to get into that arena, into that environment. There's tons of websites you can join. There's things on social media, so you could start seeing the words, looking at them, familiarize yourself with them, and then you can start learning. You don't have to jump in with 2 feet. You can come in with a toe.
Yeah. Come in where it's comfortable. Maybe a little stretch past just plain
A little stretch, right? Yeah, because we don't really grow outside, if we're not getting uncomfortable. But it doesn't have to be like a smack in the face. Because
Right.
if you're not into breathing techniques, if you're not into meditation, just even saying that you will explore it is outside of your comfort zone.
Yes.
So just reading something simple. Like I said, I started out with just joining things and reading books and just starting to understand it. And it took a little bit for it to catch on. But I think that's a really great place to start.
Yeah. And I'd say Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, is a good one.
Yes.
And you talked about Bruce Lipton. So The Biology of Belief is another good one by Dr. Bruce Lipton. So those are all good books to start with. But you know what I love most about you, Karissa, and about the Insight Method is it's also really about having compassion. And what I hear is that compassion coming through, like, okay, start where it's comfortable, where it's going to just put you a little beyond, a little beyond where you might normally be, but where you've got that motivation to move forward. And I think that compassion is really important, because I think as human beings, we all really just want to be seen and heard. And I think we all want to be successful.
Yes. And you just made me think of it too, validation.
Yes.
I'm always sharing with clients, please validate yourself. Whatever it is you're feeling, when you're journaling, when you're talking, validate, because we can't really go much forward, especially on the emotional level, if we're not validating where we are. If we're always trying to shut down and shut out, it's just going to stay stuck.
Yeah, it's true. I love that. Love it. Love it. Well, I am so grateful to have you here for our listeners at True Wellness to enjoy. And we thank you all for being here and listening. And we look forward to having you listen to our next episode, which will drop on Thursday. So with that, everybody, thank you for being here. Coach Karissa, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to being part of such an incredible team at South Bay Wellness. I'm glad to share my passion with you guys and everyone. And just remember, it starts with awareness and it grows with action and thrives with accountability.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for spending time with me today. And thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye. This is Dr. D, reminding you to tune into your body, reconnect with what matters, and embrace the journey to true wellness. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to redefine their health. Let's keep redefining wellness and empowering change together. See you next Thursday for the next episode drop.